Tennessee Titans head coach Brian Callahan cussed out Cam Ward in the offense after a disaster weekend for the group, and it's a friendly reminder that Callahan is coaching for his job. I'll break down what happened on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, I'm going to break down everything you need to know coming out of Tennessee Titans training camp over the weekend. 2 practices, and the offense was a disaster. Brian Callahan was coaching out Cam Ward and the group. I'll break down everything that happened, why I think Brian Callahan is obviously coaching for his job and he can feel it. We're also going to talk more about Cam Ward's performance over the weekend in depth, and we're going to talk more about Dan Moore Jr. because I remain very, very skeptical of that signing. But we'll finish the show with a little bit of injury updates because we got a major Kevin Winston Jr. scare on Sunday. But don't worry, folks. Everything's going to be fine. Before I dive into all of it, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. We're about to go into 13 straight days of me putting out a podcast. We have preseason games. We have joint practices. If you want to stay up to date, you want to stay entertained and be the most informed Tennessee Titans fan that you could possibly be, you got to stay locked in with me here on the Locked On Titans podcast. With that being said, though, again, a disaster weekend for the Tennessee Titans offense. Saturday, the Titans had practice coming off Friday's practice, which we broke down on my live bonus episode. And then we have Sunday's practice, and quite frankly, just an awful showing for the Tennessee Titans offense. On Saturday, they do a red zone period, 2 straight penalties, false start, holding, 1st and 25. Gets to 4th and 4, drive is over. Another red zone period. Again, it's red zone. So they're at least at the 20-yard line. They end up with a 35-yard field goal from Joey Sly because they can't move the ball. So a terrible finish to Saturday's practice for the Titans in the periods that are more like the actual game. 7-on-7, stuff like that. Cam Ward had his successes, and we'll talk about those when we dive into Cam Ward individually. But we've talked so much Cam Ward. We need to talk about this offense at large. And again, in the periods that were simulations of real football in red zone, the Titans offense fell apart at the end of Saturday's practice. You could go look at any reporter would all say the same thing. The final periods for the team on offense were just awful. They couldn't get anything going. All right. And then you go to Sunday. And it was kind of funny to see all of the reports come in for bad day, rough day, off day, blah, 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 offense, but it just across the board. So the Titans do what they call it periods, move the ball periods, different names for it, but they basically simulate real football. They go different situations, different scenarios. The defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson, is calling plays not on a script. The offense is calling plays not on a script. They're just trying to simulate real situational football, which is a smart thing to do. Titans backed up on their own 1-yard line. A drop that was open. No yards on a run. Could have been a safety. Cam Ward underthrows a deep pass. Nothing. Titans get the ball. 22-yard line. Nothing. Amani Hooker almost gets an interception. Couple of sacks. Last period, you finish with Arden Key beating Dan Moore on 3rd down for a sack to end the drive. They get absolutely nothing. Brian Callahan goes nuts, cussing out the team, expletive, this and that, frustrated. In any 7-on-7, there are successes. There are some 11-on-11 successes that we see, that we hear about. But like in all of the real simulated football stuff that the Titans have done over the weekend, the offense was just bad, really bad. And look, you got a rookie quarterback. You got a brand new offensive line playing together for the first time in a bunch of different spots, most of the spots right now, especially with Cushenberry being out. You got a young wide receiver group with some okay veterans outside of Calvin Ridley. The offensive talent is not incredible. So it's not insane that the offense would struggle. Okay, that makes sense. But at the end of the day, you can tell that Brian Callahan is feeling the heat here. Because think about what we're talking about. And I have said all along, Brian Callahan's on the hot seat. Some people don't feel that way, but Brian Callahan is on the hot seat. He's coaching for his job. If this team goes out and goes 3-14 again, or goes 4-13 again, with Cam Ward out there, if Cam Ward gets hurt, whatever, maybe Brian Callahan gets a pass to limp forward. But after what we saw last year, Mike Borgonzi is not Rancor Thon. Mike Borgonzi did not hire Brian Callahan because he's such a perfect fit with him. Rancor Thon thought that Brian Callahan was a perfect fit with him. And if that was Rancor Thon's decision, and think about this. Just think about it. Think about how the Tennessee Titans feel about Rancor Thon and the decisions that he made. And think about how they might feel about Brian Callahan right now. So you can look at it from a couple of different ways. Number one, Brian Callahan just needs to win some games to show that he is a real NFL head coach who can do this. And then two, if the best thing about the Tennessee Titans last year was the defense, and then we go into this year and the offense is absolutely terrible, but the defense is really good, and the Titans limp to 5 wins, Cam doesn't look that great because the offense looks bad. The defense is what's winning games, and they're winning low scoring. And you're like, man, who's the best coach on this coaching staff? Looks like it's actually Denard Wilson, not Brian Callahan. What's he doing here? So I think that what's a realization for me is throughout the offseason, we've done a couple, what's the biggest question for the Tennessee Titans going in? And the number one answer is always, obviously, Cam Ward. Like, how good is Cam Ward? But I have more faith that Cam Ward is a good quarterback than I do that Brian Callahan is a good NFL head coach. And it is not being discussed enough how Brian Callahan's future is so up in the air. Like, it's like, oh, he got Cam Ward. Everything he says makes sense. And Brian Callahan seems like a great guy. He's very friendly. He's very professional, very courteous in person. He is a very good person, okay? But that doesn't always mean that you're a great NFL head coach. I think that Brian Callahan would be an excellent offensive coordinator and an excellent offensive play caller. I think he got guys open at times last year. But that's not enough to be a great NFL head coach. This is the other side of the CEO-style coach. When you have the CEO-style head coach, having the coordinators that are good enough is tough. But when you go with the offensive whiz guy, is he going to be the leader and the CEO that he needs to be to run a proper football team, not just an offense? And the reality is, if Brian Callahan is an offensive guy and the offensive play isn't being elevated at all, and the defense is carrying the team, which is a defensive coordinator, not the head coach, what are we doing here? You know, that's just illogical to have that guy remain to be the head coach. So the offense looks bad. They're getting ready to go into joint practices with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of the best rosters in the NFL and a playoff team. Then they're going to play Atlanta, which could be majorly improved. They have talent. I'm not as worried about Atlanta as I am Tampa Bay whooping the Titans. But if the Titans get smoked in these joint practices and they come out and they got to go to Denver week 1 and they got to play the Rams in week 2, and you could see how this could spiral. So they need to get this together, and we can be patient. But Brian Callahan can't afford patience like we can. I can be patient and go through a rough first year of Cam Ward, because I believe that Cam Ward will get better. But can Brian Callahan survive 4-13 or 5-12? I don't know, and he probably doesn't know either. So when you see Brian Callahan cursing out the team, adding an extra padded practice because they need it, it's because he knows the season is knocking on the door right now, guys. Like, I'm about to do 13 straight days of content on the channel here, 13 straight days of episodes, because we have practice, we have conversations, we have joint practices, we have a preseason game, we have reaction to that game. Then you turn around right, there's joint practices the next week, 2 preseason games in. Now we're in the final preseason week. By the time that I won't be doing an episode, it's a Saturday, a week before the final, or 6 days before the final preseason game. Like, the season is here. Football is here, and that's an exciting thing to say. But if you're Brian Callahan and you're at practice every day and you're seeing the way that your offense looks, you know that your team is not ready yet. So, the offense is going to take time, but the person who has the least amount of time here is Brian Callahan. And I think what we've seen over the weekend shows that he knows it as well. But with that in mind, let's talk about how Cam Ward did personally. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. Time to fuel up and turn it up. With 5 Hour Energy Transfusion, it brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this is a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or even off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. I know me, talking about doing 2 weeks straight of content every single day and everything that's going on with the Titans right now, breaking down the film and all that. I might need a little extra boost myself. I also love to golf, and golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape ginger lime flavor gives you the best of your clubhouse go-to without chasing down the bev cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGolf to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders, whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36. Get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5 Hour Energy shots today. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down the weekend that was for the Tennessee Titans. We talked about the putrid performance of the offense. We're also going to talk about some big injury news and updates from the weekend at the end of the show, but I want to dive into some more individual performances from the weekend on the offensive side of the ball. Let's talk about Cam Ward and Dan Moore at left tackle. Have talked about Dan Moore, haven't got a lot of updates on Dan Moore, but saw some things over the weekend that I want to discuss. But with Cam Ward, okay, on Saturday, according to Jim Wyatt from TennesseeTitans.com, he was 21 of 29, no interceptions, had no tips, and I had even written down in my notes to give you guys a peek behind the curtain of how I process the show while I'm making my notes and my plans for what I might discuss throughout the week or the next show. I wrote down Cam's getting hot, because on Friday, it was an improved day. We saw an improved day from Cam Ward. Saturday, he started to hit some. There were 2 deep passes to Calvin Ridley, a deep pass to Bryce Oliver that he hit. He drove one into Alec Iomanor on a curl. David Martin Robinson had some catches. I think I saw Buck Rising say that Cam Ward had kind of a wiggle move in the backfield and threw one, flipped one forward on a shuffle pass to Chigakonkwo on a 3rd down drill and picked up a 1st down. So stuff like that, But there's that last period that we talked about on Saturday, the 2 red zone periods with the penalties and all of that stuff. So it was uneven at best. And then you come into Sunday, and you see the struggles that the offense is having. Barely any completions. Can't get anything going. I think Jim Wyatt reported on Sunday that he was 8 for 18, despite kind of starting out good in a 7-on-7 period. 8 for 18 on Sunday for Cam Ward. And remember, the situations where he's seeing his struggles are the situations that are most like football. They're the call-it periods, they're the simulation periods, they're the situational periods that you're practicing, not just 7-on-7 drills and things like that. 7-on-7 red zone on Sunday. I saw reports that Cam Ward had a couple of touchdown passes. They were doing low red zone work, so think 10 yards and in. They're going to be, it sounds good. Oh, there's a couple of touchdown passes. Like he threw one to Gunnar Helm. And like I said, David Martin Robinson on one, I believe. Van Jefferson might have got one, but they're working within the 10 yards, so you complete a pass at all, and you're basically getting a touchdown. I'm not trying to minimize good plays from Cam Ward to be a hater or anything. I'm just trying to be honest about, when we talk about, there was, he threw 3 touchdowns at practice. Well, think about what we're saying. Those are like 7, 8, 10, 11-yard passes that are turning into touchdowns. The things that matter much more to when we see Cam Ward play, and it better be in the first preseason game. Like, Cam Ward needs to play, and we'll talk about that later in the week when we kind of start getting into the joint practice conversations and we preview those in the game. But, Cam Ward needs as many live as regular football game reps that he can get right now. And in those, the team is struggling. It's not just his fault. And again, we'll talk about one of the reasons that the team is struggling in these areas here in just a second. But, like, if we are honest, the offense has not looked good, and part of that is Cam Ward has not been great. It's not like Cam Ward's been awesome and everyone's letting him down. He has been a part of the problem so far. Now, he's a rookie, so he should get that sort of, like, oh, yeah, our rookie quarterback's going to struggle. But I think that I'm more disappointed, personally, in the offensive line. And that really starts with Dan Moore. And I don't think that I'm disappointed in everyone on the offensive line. But I guess I talked about really evaluating the offensive line when the pads came on. First week of training camp, whatever. I'm not worried about that. But the Titans' offensive line should be better than the Tennessee Titans pass rush. The Tennessee Titans don't have a good pass rush. What we can't do, and I said this in the episode where we talked about it, where we previewed the pads coming on. I said what we can't do is when the Titans' offensive line gets whooped, or if the Titans' offensive line has a consecutive string of, like, bad days, what we can't do is we can't be like, oh, it's the defensive line so good. The Titans' defense so good. This pass rush is not going to be that good unless Femi Oladejo goes crazy. And listen, that's not off the table. When we talk about risers on tomorrow's show, I'm going to do tighten ups and tighten downs from the second week of Titans training camp, talk about risers and fallers from the second week of training camp, and then looking forward for those players at what they need to do next. But Dan Moore is going to be one of the fallers. That's for certain to me, because this defensive pass rush has looked good. And as I said, I'm just not buying it. To me, that makes me concerned about the offensive line. That's where I'm at. This offensive line had some good days early, but over the weekend, it's been pressure. Arden Key, Draymond Jones, oh, they've been very noticeable. Femi Oladejo, which we talk about risers. Femi had a good weekend. I think I saw Teron Davenport say that Femi won, like, all of his one-on-one reps in pass rush. Remember the first couple of days of pads where we talked about Femi looked terrible and couldn't win and looked out of sorts in the pass rush one-on-ones, and now he can't stop winning them. But, like, saw Dan Moore. We talked earlier, Dan Moore got beat by Arden Key to finish out the Titans' last first-team call-it period from the 22-yard line. We talked about that. And then I think it was on Friday, Dan Moore got beat in another call period. I forget who reported it, but they said brutal. You know what I mean? Like, it's just – and then sometimes when you listen to the assistant coaches talk, you could just kind of tell how the player's doing, because you could tell that they're trying to protect him a little bit. And – you know, Bill Callahan was talking after practice to all the beat reporters saying, you know, we're tweaking his technique right now. We gave him no help, no sideboard help, no chip help, none of that so far during training camp. We're cutting him loose, is what Bill Callahan said. Get him exposed to a bunch of different rushers, whether it's Draymond Jones or Arden Key or Femi Oladejo or different rush types. Like, they're really fire testing him. It's like what's Restaurant Impossible or whatever, the stress test, or the one with John Taffer, the bar rescue. You know, it's like the stress test they're giving to Dan Moore right now. But I got to tell you, we haven't had somebody come out and say Dan Moore is struggling in training camp. It has not been a good showing, blah, 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 blah. But people have come out and said that J.C. Latham looks good, that Peter Skoronski has looked good, that Jackson Slater has looked good. And we'll talk more about him tomorrow in our risers, because Jackson Slater is coming for it, man. But nobody has gone out and said, oh, Dan Moore had a nice practice. The best I saw was, I thought I saw Buck Rising say Dan Moore hasn't been super noticeable, and that's probably a good thing for the Titans' left tackle position. Something, I'm paraphrasing, but something to that note. But the only reports we've got about Dan Moore have been bad ones. And we haven't got any that saying like he's having like a good day or anything like that. And then you start to piece together these little reports and practice after practice, and there may not be a big mention of Dan Moore and a takeaway or something like that. But you hear little plays. Oh, this team period, Dan Moore got beat. Or there's, you know, sometimes it's not even saying Dan Moore's name. Sometimes Arden Key and Draymond Jones were great. Well, where did they rush from? You know, like, start to piece it together. Femi Oladejo has been winning all his one-on-ones. Femi Oladipo has looked great in this practice. Femi Oladipo has taken a step forward this weekend, stuff like that. Well, where are those guys rushing from? You know, Jeffrey Simmons has obviously been in the backfield a ton, but you have Corey Levin, and we'll talk about Kevin Zeitler when we talk about Fallers, who hasn't quite been good enough for the Titans early in camp. And I think Jeffrey Simmons kind of taken advantage of those two guys in a lot of situations. But, you know, Jeffrey Simmons is going to do what Jeffrey Simmons does. We're hearing a lot about the edge rushers making noise too. It's not just Jeffrey Simmons. So if the offensive line is not doing good enough and Dan Moore is a big concern, again, they paid him $20-some million a year, and that's not what it's going to be long term. Like, they can get out of it after 2 years with a little bit of a penalty. But Jalen Duncan, who's a riser, he's been getting rave reviews so far. So I'm just saying, if we get to, you know, Thanksgiving and Dan Moore is really struggling, he gave up the most sacks in the NFL last year, and we could talk about the nuances of that conversation with Justin Fields and Russell Wilson and their propensity to hold the ball, which turned into sacks for him. His number is inflated by having those quarterbacks behind him. There's no argument against it. But let's say it's inflated by 4 or 5 sacks. That's still 9 sacks for $20 million a year. And it's like, I know the Titans didn't have a lot of other options, and that's going to be the argument. And that's correct. They didn't have a lot of other options, but it doesn't, when we get out there and play games, if Dan Moore's getting whooped every Sunday, well, they didn't have a lot of other options, isn't going to cut it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not going to make anybody feel better when the Titans are getting whooped on that side. So, like, I'm just concerned, man. I'm sorry. I hate to be a negative Nancy. It was a bad weekend for the offense, and we got to talk about why that might be the case and be realistic. I know right now everybody wants to believe and believe and believe. The Titans can make the wild card. Some out there even say division. I see a lot of people saying, 7, 8, 9 wins, and I get optimistic and think that kind of stuff too. I think I predicted 7 or 8 wins when we did the first schedule reveal or something like that. But, realities do creep in at some point. But with that being said, some things we do got to talk about are injuries, and we got some injury updates. And for the most part, it's good stuff, but T'Vondre Sweat, it's not as good. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute you want to head to a ball game with family or friends? Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last-minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you, man. Game Time makes it all possible. I love Game Time, and I buy all my tickets on Game Time because buying tickets on Game Time is fast and simple. Prices actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. They have incredible last-minute deals, a clear view from your seat, like a panoramic view. You get a lowest price guarantee, the best features in the industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down the weekend of training camp practice for the Tennessee Titans. Look, the offense was terrible. We talked about Cam Ward and Dan Moore's place within that, but now we do got to update some injury things just so you guys are good to go for the week ahead, and I'll let you guys know the schedule ahead for the week. Tennessee Titans joint practices, when the Titans next practices, the preseason game, all of that. Before we do, though, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers make daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures, and football's right around the corner. So you want to get a good bets podcast in the rotation. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So Kevin Winston left practice early on Sunday. Very scary. Walked off the field with trainers. Everybody was tweeting it. All the beats were tweeting it. But it turns out that Kevin Winston It's just management. Brian Callahan said they had multiple padded practices in a row. They want to take it easy on him because he is coming back from injury. He's a rookie. They've been using him a lot. Titans defensive back coach was talking earlier in the weekend about how they've been, I think it was Denard Wilson, actually, Titans defensive coordinator, who talked about it earlier this week at a press conference, saying they've been moving Kevin Winston around a lot. They've been trying it at a bunch of different positions and moving him around. Brian Callahan talked before practice on Saturday, I think it was, that they were going to manage some of the players over the weekend with how many practices that they've had in a row. I think Teron Davenport said that Kevin Winston leaving early wasn't an injury. It was part of that management plan that Brian Callahan had referenced in the press conferences. So everybody relax. It's not an injury. It's just managing a rookie who's been physical. I thought Easton Freeze had a funny tweet where he said that it's because Kevin Winston's been at the bottom of the pile of every tackle made in training camp. Winston's a physical guy, so got to make sure that you're smart with him, especially, I think what happens is you get to a certain point in training camp and certain guys, like a guy like Kevin Winston, the coaching staff could be thinking in their head right now, like, he needs to get reps so that he can learn and get better, but, hey, this guy can play. Let's make sure, if we think for any reason that we need to be a little delicate with him, let's be delicate with him because this guy can make a difference on Sundays. This isn't just about getting a rookie rep so that he can provide depth if he has to play. No, Kevin Winston's going to play for us, and he can make a big impact for us, as a matter of fact. So let's just make sure that we ease him in, right? We've been talking about that all summer since he was drafted, that they need to ease him in slowly. I'm glad that he's ahead of schedule, but this is part of easing him in slowly, right? This is part of that. So great news. I was really sad when I saw the reports come out that he wasn't, that he was walking off the field, but I feel a lot better now, and you guys should too. Still no Blake Hance, and another depth interior offensive lineman who's a long shot to make the roster, the longest long shot, in my opinion, Chandler Brewer. Both missed practice. You're starting to see cluster injuries on the interior offensive line when you think about Lloyd Cushenberry, Blake Hance, Chandler Brewer. Now, Peter Skoronski was a little banged up, although it doesn't seem like it affected him. He came back to practice the next day, no big deal. So the Titans have signed Hamilton Albright, who you might have heard. He was with the team for a little bit last year. They're bringing him in for depth purposes. When Hance comes back, he might be gone. When Cush gets activated off PUP, if that happens anytime soon, I wouldn't get too attached. But it's a name that has been around before. But it's just, the conversation is there is a little bit of a cluster injury situation on the interior offensive line right now with Hance's calf injury. I don't know what's going on with Brewer. Haven't seen a report on that yet. And then, of course, Cushenberry as well. Skoronski's fine. And then Kevin Zeitler got rest on Sunday, which could have been part of the offensive line issues, as you would have had a backup player in there, which could have been Slater, could have been Rupsich, other answers that we could discuss. But regardless, Zeitler got rest on Sunday, and I think that's part of the interior offensive line cluster situation too, is Kevin Zeitler's 35 years old, and there are going to be days where you just shouldn't practice him because he needs to rest, and I think he's been struggling as of late. I've been seeing a lot of reports of Jeffrey Simmons kind of whooping him. Saw another report saying the Titans need more from Kevin Zeitler, which I think we talked about in the bonus episode, just something that I saw. So Zeitler may be a guy that's, I worry about the Kevin Zeitler thing. He was with Detroit. He was surrounded by really good players. It was a good offense. Everything flowed together. You come to Tennessee, maybe the worst offense, and the offensive line around you isn't quite as seasoned and as good. I think J.C. Latham's going to be good, but he's not Penei Sewell, who I think is the best offensive lineman in the NFL. It's him and Lane Johnson and Tristan Wirfs, you know what I mean? That's the trio that I would put as the top offensive tackles in the NFL right now. But with Wirfs being hurt, though, obviously he's not in the discussion. But it's just a different situation. So keeping my eye on Dan Moore. Titans have seen enough surprise retirements. I'm worried about that with Zeitler. Jackson Slater would have to step up in a major way right away, and I don't know if we want to do that with Cam Ward immediately. But the last player that I want to talk about is T'Vondre Sweat. And I know, collective eye roll, Tic-Tac Tyler's talking about T'Vondre Sweat, but that's 3 straight practices that T'Vondre Sweat has missed with an abdominal injury. We were told when it was first reported, Brian Callahan said it was nothing serious at the press conference. I can't help but put on my thinking cap. Just wonder back to the summer last year when they held Sweat out of a couple of things and he missed some things and it ended up being fine. But I think behind the scenes the whole time, they were just making sure that he got in shape. Maybe came in that first week of training camp. They weren't really happy with the shape that he was in. Said, hey, we're going to shut you down for a week. Make sure that we get you right and you're good to go and you're in the proper shape. And then we'll be good to go. Maybe it really is, an abdominal injury, but you just wonder if it's just like, hey, let's not have Sweat out here getting all these reps on him, all that. Let's make sure he's in great shape, he's in great condition, and he's ready to play the whole season because we're going to need him. I just wonder if there's more to it. But if he is injured and it is something more than, it's nothing serious, I have talked about my concerns with the Titans' interior defensive line depth behind Jeffrey Simmons, Sebastian Joseph-Day, and T'Vondre Sweat. I know that Draymond Jones can kick inside on passing downs, play a little bit inside, but just saying, that's a thin spot for the Titans after a top-heavy top 3 on the IDL. And they let Keandre Coburn go, who was their only veteran nose tackle. You got a lot of undrafted guys who are fighting for spots. Just could become a concern if anything were to linger with Sweat. So outside of me being the worst guy ever to make this point, just keep your eye on that because the Titans need him. He's a very important piece of that defense. So with that being said, though, that is going to do it for me today, folks. Tomorrow we're going to talk about risers and fallers from the second week of training camp, do some tighten up, tighten down. Then after that, we are going to look ahead. The Titans have practice on Wednesday morning. Then they have a joint practice with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Thursday. We're going to look ahead to both those practices. Then I'll be breaking down both of those practices the nights after they happen. Then on Saturday, Tennessee Titans will be playing a football game, baby. Football is here, but that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.